Hello, my friends in faith and journey. May God's peace be with every heart that hears me today. I am your storyteller of faith, and I come to share another one of those stories that make us stop, think, and feel the gentle breeze of the divine touching our existence. You see, life is like the sea, sometimes calm, sometimes raging. And it is about this fury, this overwhelming storm, that I am going to tell you. A story that begins with the lament of the ocean and the silent cry of a soul. There was a man, my dear listener, named Peter. Peter was not an impetuous adventurer from fairy tales, but a fisherman with a simple soul and a hard-working heart. His life was the sea, the smell of salt and fish, the constant rocking of the boat that was his home and his livelihood. Married to a woman with gentle eyes, Anna, and father to a girl with an easy smile, Sophia, Pedro lived what many would call a blessed life, in modesty and faith. Until that day when the sky, once blue and promising, closed in with an embrace of dark and threatening clouds. A storm, the kind that the village elders warned of with fear, swept across the coast without warning. Pedro was away, as usual, seeking bread for his family. Anna, at home, felt her heart tighten with each clap of thunder, each gust of wind that shook their small wooden dwelling. Hours dragged on, turning into a night of agony and whispered prayer. Dawn, when it finally arrived, brought not relief, but the most feared silence. No news, no boat on the horizon. Hope, fragile as the foam on the waves, began to dissolve. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Peter's boat was never found. No sign. Little Sophia asked for her father's cotton beard and his tight hugs. Anna, her gaze lost on the horizon, tried to remain strong, but inside, she felt like a ship adrift, with the mast of faith broken in half. The whole village mourned. The sea, which had given them so much, had taken Pedro. But does the sea always take? Or does it sometimes just hide, keep, and then return in a way that defies everything we know? And so, my dears, life went on, but in a painfully incomplete way for Anna and Sophia. The years are like the tides. They come and go, and with them they carry pieces of us, but they also deposit new sand. For Anna, each new day was a battle against the longing that tightened her chest like a knot. She saw other families in the square, fathers and daughters, and a pang of pain pierced her soul, reminding her of what she had lost. Sophia grew up, and her father's absence was a constant shadow in her days, an unanswered question that hung in the air. The image of Pedro became a distant memory, almost a dream. The people of the village, over time, stopped asking, stopped commenting. Life, in its rawness, teaches us that mourning has its time, and then life demands that we move on. But how can you move on when a part of you is missing, sailing somewhere unknown, or worse, forever asleep in the depth? Anna clung to the faith that Pedro cherished so much. She went to church, she prayed, but she felt that her prayers were like empty bottles thrown into the sea, with no certain destination. Pedro's faith, the one he demonstrated with such conviction, seemed to have sunk with him. How many times at night did she look up at the starry sky and ask, "Lord, where is he? Why such a trial?" The voice of despair whispered doubts, undermining the rock of her belief. Money was tight, and widowhood brought with it a heavy burden of responsibilities. Anna began to work harder, to double her efforts, so that Sophia would not feel the absence even more. The girl, in turn, grew up with an idealized image of her fisherman father, a hero whom the sea had taken, but who would never be forgotten. She drew boats, made small wooden models, all in honor of the father she never fully knew. Hope turned into a faint, almost imperceptible breeze. 10 years passed. 10 years of silence from the sea. 10 years of a wait that seemed endless. Can faith survive such a long desert, such an arduous journey, without even an oasis on the horizon? And then, my friends, after so many years of emptiness, the story takes a turn that defies logic and touches the heart. Sophia, now a young woman, carried with her her father's legacy, a love for the sea. She did not become a fisherwoman, but worked in the small village library, a place of peace, where the smell of old books mingled with the salty wind that came in through the windows. One day, while organizing a pile of forgotten volumes in the attic, a dusty box caught her attention. It was an old box, made of hardwood, with carvings of fish and waves. When she opened it, she smelled a peculiar scent, a mixture of sea air and old paper. Inside, among some curious belongings, there was a diary. It was no ordinary diary, but a logbook, yellowed by time and speckled with what appeared to be sea salt stains. The handwriting was firm but slightly faded, and the name on the first page, Pedro. Sophia's heart raced. It was her father's diary. With trembling hands, she began to flip through the pages. They were notes about the weather, fishing, small details of everyday life at sea. But there was something else. On many pages, Pedro had written messages. Not messages to himself, but what appeared to be advice, thoughts, little sermons of faith and perseverance. No matter how strong the storm, Sophia read, with a trembling voice, the anchor of faith will always find the rocky bottom. On another page, a phrase that seemed like a lament, but also a promise. Even if I am lost in the waves, may my message find the shore and touch a heart in need. Sophia felt a chill. It was as if Pedro were speaking to her across time and absence. But why would he write these messages? And to whom? The mystery of those words deepened, and the young woman felt that she was holding not just a diary, but a living piece of her father's soul. Something was stirring, something inexplicable, like a tide changing its course. Could the words of a lost man somehow find their way back and fulfill a divine purpose? The discovery of Pedro's diary ignited a new flame in Sophia's heart and rekindled a dormant hope in Anna. Every night, under the dim light of a lantern, mother and daughter read together the words left by the fisherman. The messages of faith, perseverance, and love seemed to have been written for them, for that very moment of doubt and searching. One passage in particular touched Anna deeply. Never forget, my Anna, that waiting is the seed of miracles, and that with each dawn, even if the sun does not appear, God is weaving the invisible. This phrase echoed in Anna's soul, like an ancient and comforting song. It was then that the second sign, a seemingly mundane event, came to connect in a surprising way with those words from the diary. One day, an old sailor, who had recently arrived in the village, entered the library. His face was marked by the sun and time, and he had a peculiar gleam in his eyes. When he saw Sophia, he smiled. "Young lady, you look a lot like someone I met many years ago, someone who gave me hope when I needed it most." Curious, Sophia asked who it was. The old man then told a story that made the blood run cold in the veins of mother and daughter. He had been, like Pedro, a shipwreck survivor. His boat had been destroyed in a terrible storm, and he had spent days adrift, without water or food, his faith exhausted. Until one gray morning, an object floating in the waves caught his attention. It was a bottle. Inside it was a rolled-up piece of paper, and on that paper was a message. "God is with you. brother of the sea. Hold on, for a miracle is on its way. Your family waits." The sailor said that message, written in the handwriting of a man he had never met, was what gave him the strength not to give up. Days later, he was rescued. He kept that paper as a sacred treasure. Sophia, her voice breaking, asked if he still had the message. The old man, with an enigmatic smile, took a worn leather wallet out of his pocket. Inside, carefully folded, was the piece of paper. The handwriting was the same as in Pedro's diary. The pieces began to fit together, revealing a bigger plan, deeper than anyone could have imagined. But if Pedro's messages were reaching others, and even the diary had been found, could Pedro himself be alive somewhere? And now, my dear ones, we come to the heart of our story, to the moment when the invisible becomes visible, and faith, once tested in the desert, blossoms into an oasis of miracle. The old sailor, named Gaspar, not only confirmed that the message was from Pedro, but also revealed that he had been having a recurring dream in recent days. A dream of a distant, little-known island where he saw a man with a cotton beard and a melancholic but hopeful gaze. Peter. The connection between the diary, the message in the bottle, and Gaspar's dream was undeniable. It was no longer coincidence, but divine providence unfolding. Anna, driven by a force she had not felt in a long time, and Sophia, with the courage of youth and the certainty that the truth was near, decided to act. The village, once skeptical, now united in a chain of prayer and support. Gaspar, with his knowledge of the sea, indicated the route Pedro would likely have been carried by the currents. A small boat was arranged, and a group of experienced fishermen, friends of Pedro's, volunteered to accompany them. The journey was long and full of uncertainty. Anna prayed with every wave. Sophia felt her father's presence grow stronger with every breeze. Days of sailing. And then, on the horizon, a greenish spot began to appear. An island, small, inhospitable, but with a piece of sand that seemed like an invitation. As they approached the rocky coast, a sound, a familiar sound. Someone was singing an old fisherman's song. The pretty voice, though hoarse from time and loneliness, was unmistakable. And there he was, sitting on a rock with long hair and beard, white as the sea foam. His body was thin, his skin weathered by the sun, but his eyes, Pedro's eyes still carried the same gentle light as 10 years ago. He was there, shipwrecked, but alive. He had built a small shelter with what he found, eating fruit from the island and fish he could catch. And his faith? His faith not only survived, it deepened. He had spent these years in deep communion with God, writing messages and throwing them into the sea, hoping that someone would find them, that his faith would not be in vain. He had no idea that one of his own messages, found by Gaspar, and his diary, kept by his family, would be the keys to his rescue. The reunion was a mixture of tears and laughter, of disbelief and a joy that seemed to burst from their hearts. Anna ran into Pedro's arms, and the 10-year embrace was finally consummated. Sophia, now a woman, was embraced by the father she had only known in dreams and in written words. Pedro's scent, the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his hands. Everything was real. The miracle was not only that he had survived, but the way God, in his infinite wisdom, used Pedro's own words of faith to orchestrate his return. The sea, which seemed to have taken him away, now returned him. And faith, which seemed to have been shipwrecked, now rose stronger than ever. What a story, isn't it, my friends? The journey of Pedro, Anna, and Sophia teaches us a profound and unchanging truth. God's time is not our time, but it is always the perfect time. 10 years had passed, 10 years of pain, of absence, of a faith that wavered but never completely broke. And in the end, the miracle came, not in a spectacular way, but woven into the most unlikely details. A forgotten diary, a bottle thrown into the sea, an old sailor's dream. God used Pedro's own perseverance and faith, expressed in his messages, as links to bring him home. This story reminds us that even in the longest deserts of life, when hope seems like a distant mirage, God's hand is working behind the scenes, preparing the ground for the manifestation of His glory. How often do we feel shipwrecked, lost in a sea of problems, without seeing dry land? How often does doubt assail us, and faith seem like a leaky boat? But Peter's lesson is clear. Keep casting your messages of faith into the sea of life. Keep trusting, even if the answer is delayed. Your own words of hope, your prayers, your good deeds may be the link that God will use to rescue you, or to rescue someone you love. Perhaps you are going through a time of waiting right now, a period of uncertainty, of closed doors. I want to tell you, with the affection of a grandfather, don't give up. Your message in a bottle, your faith, your prayer is being heard. And God's plan is being woven, even if you can't see the threads. Believe in the power of details, in the little coincidences that are, in fact, signs of the divine. Peter lost his faith for a while. Yes, he doubted, like any of us. But it was his previous faith, his written message, that brought him back. And that's beautiful, isn't it? The legacy of our faith reaches us, even when we are most lost. And you, my dear friend, who is listening to me now, have you ever had an experience like this? A story where the wait was long, your faith was tested, but in the end, a surprising miracle manifested itself. I would love to hear your testimony, your own message in a bottle. Share in the comments below how faith helped you overcome a difficult time. Leave your amen if this story touched your heart, and if you believe that God works in the details. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so that more stories of faith and hope can reach other hearts in need. May God's peace be with you, today and always. And remember, the anchor of faith always finds the bottom, even in the biggest storms.